I'm Marilyn Hargrove, Sector 69 years old, and on the night my youngest daughter told me to pack my things and leave the house I'd lived in for 3 decades, I couldn't remember how I got to the bus stop or how I found myself standing on my eldest daughter's porch, holding a grocery bag with nothing in it but my slippers and a framed photo of Lloyd I'd taken from the mantel I hadn't planned on leaving. But when Dylan looked me in the eye and said, "Thanks for the house, Mom, but now I don't need you," something in me broke. I never thought I'd be the kind of mother who lost her home to her own child. But there I was, at nearly 70, starting over, with nothing but the clothes on my back and a past I hadn't even had time to pack. Before I tell you what happened next, leave a comment and let me know where you're listening from, and tap that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like the people you gave everything to forgot what you gave. I've lived in Livendale for 32 years. It's not the kind of town you see on postcards, but I always loved how familiar it was. The post office clerk knows me by name, and the grocery store keeps my favorite rye bread on the bottom shelf just because they know I don't like reaching. Lloyd and I moved here back in '91, back when gas was $1, and we could stretch a single paycheck across 2 weeks without thinking too hard about it. We picked Livendale because it felt steady. We didn't need big city noise, we just needed a place where we could raise our daughters, plant fruit trees, and pay off a house in peace. I've managed Elmer's Fabrics for most of my adult life. It's the kind of shop where folks come in for 2 yards of cotton and end up staying an hour just to talk. Over the years, I've learned that people pour their hearts out more easily when their hands are busy feeling fabric. I've heard about cheating husbands, estranged children, and hip surgeries gone wrong, all while measuring linen and ringing up buttons. I never went to college, but I've earned my share of wisdom behind that counter. Lloyd passed away 4 years ago. Heart attack sudden in the garage halfway through changing the oil in our Ford. We'd been married 45 years. I still set out 2 coffee mugs in the morning sometimes without realizing it. We raised 2 daughters in that house on Sycamore Street. Paisley is our oldest practical ground, had always had a job even before she had her driver's license. She runs her own hair salon, now married to a quiet man named Wayne, who sells insurance. They've got 2 kids, teenagers now, and a neat white house with trimmed hedges just 15 minutes from mine. Dylan came second, always a little more scattered. She never liked to be told what to do. Changed her major in college 3 times before dropping out entirely. She married a programmer named Keith, divorced him 7 years later, and has a boy named Frankie, who's now 10. Since the divorce, she's moved 4 times in 6 years. Each apartment smaller than the last. Frankie comes to me twice a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays. He brings his schoolwork, and I bake cookies, and sometimes we pull weeds in the garden just to be outside. He reminds me of Dylan at that age, bright eyes, wild blonde hair, always dreaming. But he's steadier, more careful. Maybe life made him that way. Last month, Dylan showed up at my house on a Thursday. She looked tired, thinner than usual, and I knew before she said a word that she needed money. Her apartment had flooded a burst pipe, she said. She needed $3,000 for a deposit on a new place. I'd just paid to fix her car in February, helped with her overdue light bill around Christmas. I didn't keep track, I never did, but I knew my retirement couldn't stretch much further. I gave her the money anyway. That night, I lay awake thinking about what would happen to her if I stopped being able to help, and what would happen to Frankie. I thought about the house ours since 1991 paid off solid, worth something, now that Livendale was starting to grow again. Maybe I thought if I gave the house to Dylan legally, she could finally settle down. Give Frankie a room of his own, find her footing. I could stay on, of course. A life estate, Roger called it. I'd have the right to live there as long as I pleased. I signed the papers the next week. I didn't tell Paisley. She wouldn't have understood. I told Dylan on a Friday evening. I'd made Frankie's favorite casserole and even baked an apple pie. I was expecting tears, maybe a hug. I was not expecting the look she gave me, calculating, measured. Like someone had just been handed the keys to a prize they weren't sure they deserved but intended to use. She hugged me, but it felt different. That night, I told myself it was just shock, that she needed time to process. I didn't know it yet, but I had just given away my home, and in doing so, I had unknowingly opened the door to losing much more than that. The first time I heard unfamiliar voices coming from my living room, I thought I was imagining things. I'd just gotten home from work at the fabric shop, my feet sore, my shoulders aching, and when I opened the front door, I heard Dylan's voice, then a man's voice. I stepped in and saw her standing there with a notebook in her hand, speaking to a man I'd never seen before. He had a buttoned-up shirt, a digital tablet in his hand, and a polite smile, like someone used to stepping into other people's homes without hesitation. "Oh, Mom," Dylan said, her smile stretched a little too wide. "This is Mr. Clayfield. He's a real estate agent." I paused. "A real estate agent?" She gave a small laugh like it was nothing. "Just wanted to get the house appraised. Mr. Clayfield was kind enough to swing by after hours." The man stepped forward, offering his hand. "Lovely home, Mrs. Hargrove. Beautiful bones. Great lot. Houses like this don't last long these days." I shook his hand, still trying to process what I was seeing. "Dylan?" I said, looking past him. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" She turned toward him. "Would you mind taking a look at the backyard? There's a patio I think you'll like." He nodded and stepped outside, tablet in hand. In the kitchen, I turned to her. "Why is there a realtor here? I told you." She said, avoiding my eyes, "Just getting the house valued." "For what?" She sighed. "For planning, for the future." I could feel it starting in my chest, the tightness that comes when you already know the answer, but ask anyway. "Planning what, Dylan?" "You said yourself, the house is too big for one person," she replied. "And I can't afford the property taxes or upkeep. But if we sell it, I can buy something smaller. Maybe even outright. No mortgage. And the rest can go to Frankie's education." I stared at her. "Dylan, I live here." She softened her voice like I was the one being unreasonable. "I know, Mom, but I've already found a good apartment for you. One level near the center of town. No stairs, no yard to maintain. You'll be more comfortable." I didn't answer. I just looked at her and saw someone I didn't know. A week ago, she hugged me and cried in this very room. Now she was calmly talking about moving me out like it was already decided. "You said I had the right to live here for the rest of my life," I reminded her. "And you do," she said. But Mr. Clayfield explained, "Lifetime occupancy doesn't mean this house specifically. It just means housing Mom. Legally, we're not doing anything wrong." I left the room without another word. By Wednesday, there was a white van parked out front with a company logo I didn't recognize. When I came inside, I heard voices upstairs. I climbed the stairs slowly and found two men in the room that used to be Paisley's halfway through stripping the wallpaper. "What are you doing?" I asked. One of them turned toward me. "Renovating, ma'am," Miss Hargrove said to update the upstairs before listing. I walked back down without saying another word. I called Dylan. No answer. I sent her a message. "Stop this immediately. I didn't approve anything." She replied 10 minutes later. "The work is necessary to increase the home's value. Please don't interfere." That night, she came by with another man in tow. He looked about Dylan's age, maybe older. Nice suit, polished shoes. They walked into the living room like I wasn't even there. She flicked on the light. "Mom, this is Mr. Lang. He's interested in buying the house." I didn't stand up. I didn't greet him. I just sat in the same chair Lloyd used to sit in when he read the paper. Mr. Lang gave me an uneasy nod. "Evening, Mrs. Hargrove. You have a beautiful home." "I know," I said. "I've lived here for over 30 years. Dylan looked annoyed. "We're just going to walk through real quick. Mr. Lang wants to make sure the renovations are going in the right direction. I didn't say a word as they headed upstairs. When they returned, I was still in the same chair. Mr. Lang thanked me and stepped outside. Dylan stayed back. "You're acting like a child," she said. I turned to face her. "You're selling my house, Dylan. You're tearing it apart while I'm still living in it." She crossed her arms. "It's not your house anymore. You gave it to me. I have every legal right to sell it. And what happens to me, I already told you. I found a place. A 1-bedroom with new appliances and no stairs. You'll be safer there. Easier to maintain." I never asked to leave, but it's what's best. For you, for me, for Frankie. She was calm, cold. And I could see in her face that she had already moved on. I didn't recognize the woman standing in front of me. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "You don't have a choice. The papers are signed. The buyer is ready. The movers will be here in 2 weeks. My voice was quiet but steady. "Then you'll have to call the police to get me out." For a moment, she looked stunned. Then she recovered. "I won't do that," she said. "But you know you can't stay. The house is sold. It's over." And then she said it. "Thanks for the house, Mom. But now I don't need you. Get out." I don't remember leaving. Just the sound of the door shutting behind me. I walked without direction, the air cold on my face. The bus ride to Paisley's is a blur. What I do remember is standing on her porch, unable to lift my hand to ring the bell. I didn't have a suitcase, just my purse and the framed photo of Lloyd I had grabbed without thinking. The door opened before I could knock. Paisley stood there, hair-pinned back apron still on. She took one look at me and stepped forward without a word. "Mom," she whispered what happened. I opened my mouth to answer, but no sound came. Just tears. She didn't ask again. "Ruby," she called over her shoulder. "Get the guest room ready. Tim, make some tea." She sat me on the couch, covered me with a throw, and placed a cup of warm tea in my hands. She sat next to me, one hand on mine. "Tell me everything," she said. And I did. Every detail. From the check I wrote to the renovations I never approved. I told her about the buyer, the real estate agent, the construction crews, and finally the words Dylan said to me that evening. When I finished, Paisley was quiet. Then she stood up and said, "You're not going anywhere. You'll stay here with us." I tried to argue. "Honey, I don't want to be in the way." "You're not," she said. "You're my mother. This is your home now." That night, I lay awake in the guest room. The walls were unfamiliar. The air smelled like lavender, and I could hear the hum of the dishwasher from downstairs. I thought about my house, what used to be my house, and wondered what else Dylan had planned. I hadn't even taken my coat when I left. I didn't have any of my clothes, none of my photographs, and I didn't know if I'd ever step inside that house again. The morning after I moved into Paisley's house, I woke up unsure of where I was. For a second, I expected to see the old cracks in the corner of my ceiling, the same way I had for 30 years. But instead, I was looking up at smooth white paint and a ceiling fan that didn't hum the same way mine did. I sat up slowly, remembering everything at once, my coat still draped on a chair, my purse on the floor next to the bed, and the photo of Lloyd on the nightstand, where I'd placed it the night before. Downstairs, the house was already moving. I heard the sound of dishes in the sink, the low murmur of the local news on the TV. Tim passed by the hallway, carrying a laundry basket, giving me a small wave without saying anything. It was strange being in someone else's house, and yet being treated as if I belonged. That afternoon, Paisley came into my room, carrying a padded envelope. She set it on the edge of the bed. This was in the mailbox this morning. It's addressed to you. I opened it and pulled out the invitation without needing to read it. The annual charity dinner. I'd gone every year for as long as I could remember. Sometimes with Lloyd, sometimes alone. It was usually the same crowd: families from town, small business owners, a few folks from the school board. Last year, I sat at a table with the Morgans from across the street and the Thompsons who ran the bakery. Paisley looked hesitant. I wasn't sure if you'd want to go. Ezra and I can come with you if you do. I held the invitation in my hand, but didn't say anything. Later that day, my phone rang. It was the principal from Frankie's school. Mrs. Hargrove. I'm sorry to call you like this, but I haven't been able to reach your daughter. You're listed as Frankie's emergency contact. I stood up straight. Is something wrong with Frankie? No, he's fine. He's here. But he's refusing to go home. Says he wants to stay with you. I'll be right there, I said. Paisley drove me to the school. Frankie was sitting on a bench near the entrance, hugging his backpack tight to his chest. When he saw me, he got up and walked over without saying a word. I crouched in front of him. Hey, sweetheart, what's going on? He looked down. I don't want to go back there. I want to live with you. I brushed the hair away from his eyes. Why, honey? He hesitated, then said, Mom told everyone you're just moving because it's better for you. But I heard her talking to someone. She said she's selling the house and that you're going to have to live in an apartment. I didn't know what to say. I looked into his face and saw confusion, disappointment, something too heavy for a boy that age to carry. Frankie, sometimes adults do things that feel confusing. Your mom's trying to do what she thinks is best. He shook his head. She lied to you. Before I could respond, Dylan's car pulled up. She parked without cutting the engine and came rushing over. Frankie, she said out of breath. Why didn't you wait inside? The school called me. What's going on? I want to stay with Grandma, he said, not meeting her eyes. She turned to me. What did you tell him? Nothing, I said. The school called me. I just got here. Dylan took a breath, her voice gentler this time. Frankie, sweetheart, we talked about this. Remember? We're moving soon, and you're going to have your own room. Just give it a little time. I don't want to move, he said. I want to stay in our house. With Grandma. I knelt again and looked at him. Your mom's waiting, sweetheart. You need to go with her for now. I promise I'll see you soon, just like before. Promise, he asked quietly. Always. He walked to the car without looking back. Dylan stayed behind. Thank you, she said quietly. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it for him. She blinked hard but didn't argue. She just turned and followed her son back to the car. That evening when we returned to Paisley's, Ezra told me Dylan had called while we were out. He handed me my phone. 3 missed calls, 1 message. Mom. Call me. Urgent. I didn't call back right away. I sat in the kitchen, the phone resting face down beside my tea. Eventually, I took a deep breath and dialed. Mom, Dylan said the moment she picked up. He backed out. Who, Mr. Lang, the buyer? He came by, gave the deposit back, and said he changed his mind. I waited. He said he found out how I got the house. Said he didn't want anything to do with that kind of situation. Said the energy felt wrong. Can you believe that I didn't answer? I already put money down on a new place, she went on. Ordered furniture. I was counting on that money. You can find another buyer. I tried, but everyone already knows. The agents don't even want to list it now. One of them said she couldn't take the listing in good conscience. I let the silence stretch. Then she said, You could come back. If you just came home, we could act like none of this happened. People would stop talking. I could sell the house quietly. You want me to pretend this never happened? I'm just trying to fix it. I didn't raise my voice. I'm not coming back, Dylan. I'm living here now, and I won't pretend. She started to say something else, but I ended the call. The next day, I got a call from Martha, one of Dylan's co-workers from the appliance store. I thought you should know, she said. People are upset with Dylan. They've heard what happened. Some folks won't even talk to her. I appreciate you telling me, I said. That evening, the phone rang again. It was Frankie. Grandma, can I come over this weekend? Even just for the night. You know I'd love that, sweetheart. Did you ask your mom? I did. She said, now's not a good time. There was a pause. She cries at night. I hear her. She thinks I'm asleep. I didn't know what to say, and she's always on the phone, arguing. Your mom's having a hard time, I said gently. I told her I want to live with Dad, and he said yes. He talked to a lawyer and everything. I sat down. Frankie, that's a big decision. I know, but Dad would never do what she did to you. He paused. Are you still mad at her? I didn't answer right away. No, sweetheart. I'm not mad. We're just trying to find our way again. After we hung up, I stayed on the porch, the air cooling around me. I watched the sun drop behind the trees and listened to the quiet rustle of wind through the branches. Nothing had been fixed, but for the first time in weeks, the anger had softened. I didn't know what Dylan would do next, but I had a feeling the unraveling wasn't over yet. The letter came on a Tuesday. I almost threw it away thinking it was another catalog or insurance offer, but something about the envelope made me pause. Cream-colored, heavy paper, my name handwritten in blue ink. Inside was a single sheet, an invitation to a luncheon at the Historical Society downtown. Not a fundraiser, not a committee meeting, just a gathering of longtime residents and small business owners. I hadn't been to one in years. The bottom of the note read, "We hope you'll join us, Edith. You've always been part of the heart of this town." I read it twice, then folded it neatly and set it on the counter. Later that night over tea, I mentioned it to Paisley. You should go, she said. You've earned a seat at that table. I'm not sure I'd recognize anyone anymore. She smiled. Let them recognize you. The next morning, I picked one of my older dresses from the closet navy blue with a modest neckline. I'd worn it to Lloyd's retirement party. I brushed my hair back, pinned it, and put on the silver earrings he gave me on our 25th anniversary. Paisley offered to drive me, but I told her I needed to walk. The community hall hadn't changed much. Cream walls, folding chairs, a table of lukewarm coffee, and those store-bought cookies people pretend to like. But there were familiar faces, Mrs. Jenks from the Library George, who used to coach Little League, and Helen from City Records. They smiled and waved as I came in. Some stood to hug me. I didn't know I'd missed this place until I stepped into it again. We sat at round tables. People caught up, asked about grandchildren and weather and the road construction out on Route 4. It was easy conversation, the kind that floats. Halfway through, someone tapped a glass for attention. We'd like to recognize someone special today, the speaker said. She may not know it, but she's been a quiet force in this community for years. Raised a family here, worked hard, gave generously, and never asked for praise. But we noticed. Edith Hargrove. Would you stand for a moment? I felt every eye turn toward me. My hands went cold. I stood slowly, unsure what to do with them. There was light applause, and then people were on their feet. Some clapped harder. Others smiled and nodded. One woman near the back wiped her eye. When I sat down again, Helen leaned over and whispered, Long overdue. After the luncheon, as I stepped outside, someone called my name. Mrs. Hargrove. A man approached, younger than me, mid-40s maybe. Tall, neatly dressed. You don't know me, he said. I'm Michael Rayner. I'm a financial advisor. I work with a few people around here, small estates, retirement planning. I also worked briefly with your daughter. I nodded slowly. Dylan. Yes, ma'am. I didn't realize until recently that the house she was selling belonged to you originally. It did. He shifted slightly. I came across something I think you should see. I wasn't comfortable holding on to it, and given everything I've heard, well, I believe it's yours. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Inside was a copy of a legal document, one I hadn't seen before. The title read, Trustee Amendment and Revocation Clause. Below that, a paragraph granting Dylan the authority to override certain occupancy provisions effective only with notarized consent from the original owner. My signature was on the line. Except, I never signed it. He looked at me carefully. If that's your signature, I'll let the matter drop. But if it's not? I stared at the page. The loops in the E and the slant in the H looked right, but the spacing was off. The tail of the G curled differently. It was close, but it wasn't mine. I never signed this, I said quietly. He gave a small nod. I thought so. Would you like me to connect you with someone who can help verify that formally? I nodded. The next few days moved slowly. I didn't tell Paisley or Ezra right away. I kept the folder tucked in the drawer by the bed. I stared at it sometimes, unsure if I wanted it to be real or not. By Friday, I had a meeting with a handwriting analyst in the next county over. A soft-spoken woman with glasses and careful hands. I brought old letters, signed receipts, and the original trust document. She studied everything for over an hour. When she looked up, her voice was gentle. This signature on the amendment was traced. It's not your natural hand. Someone practiced likely from another signed document and then replicated it slowly. I sat very still. She continued, I can prepare a full report for you, and if needed, testify. When I returned to Paisley's that evening, I found her sitting on the porch with Ezra. They looked up as I came through the gate. You've been quiet, she said. Everything all right? I handed her the folder. She read through it slowly. Ezra leaned over her shoulder. When she finished, she looked up at me. What do you want to do? I want to see if the law still means something, I said. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the creak of the ceiling, the tick of the clock. My whole life, I'd believed that family meant something you protected. But now, I had proof, actual proof, that mine had tried to steal from me. In the morning, I called Mr. Rayner. I'm ready, I said. He didn't ask what for. It started quietly, the way real change often does. Mr. Rayner arranged for the handwriting analysis to be notarized and added to a formal report. Then he put me in touch with a retired probate attorney named Jean Withers, someone who still took on the occasional case if she believed in it. We met in the back room of a library 2 towns over. She listened without interrupting, her hands folded in her lap. When I finished, she nodded once, slow and firm. This won't be quick, she said, and it won't be pretty. But it's winnable. I handed her the envelope with the original trust, the forged amendment, and the signature comparison. She tucked it carefully into her leather briefcase. The first step was sending a cease and desist letter to the real estate agency. By the end of that week, Dylan's listing had vanished from every online site. A formal injunction followed, blocking any sale or transfer of the house until ownership could be reviewed. I didn't tell Dylan. I figured she'd find out soon enough. The phone call came 3 days later. She didn't bother with pleasantries. You're suing me, she snapped. I'm protecting what's mine, I said. She let out a bitter laugh. You have no idea what this is going to cost. Lawyers, filings, court fees. You think you'll win? I don't think I told her. I know I never signed that paper. She was silent for a moment. Then she said, You really want to tear this family apart over a house? No, I said. You already did that. I hung up. A week later, a packet arrived from Jean's office formal paperwork depositions to sign a preliminary court date. Paisley helped me go through everything, reading the fine print and highlighting the parts that needed my initials. You're sure about this? She asked as she slid the last form into a folder. I've never been more sure. Frankie called that evening. He'd heard the grown-ups arguing again. Mom said you're taking her to court, he said softly. I'm standing up for myself, sweetheart. That's all. Is that bad? No, I said. Sometimes it's the only thing you can do. He didn't speak right away. Then he said, I told Dad I want to stay with him through summer. That sounds like a good idea, I said gently. He said okay. He's already talking to someone about it. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. By the time the court date arrived, the story had started to spread. A few folks in town who'd known Lloyd and me from church or the school board reached out quietly, messages left on my voicemail, handwritten notes folded into my mailbox at Paisley's. We're with you, Edith. It's wrong what she did. Whatever you need, we'll help. It wasn't loud support, but it was there. Steady. At the courthouse, I sat next to Jean while Dylan sat across the aisle, flanked by her attorney. She didn't look at me. The judge was brisk but thorough. He reviewed the materials, the forensic report, the original trust documents. He asked a few questions. I answered calmly. At one point, he asked Dylan's attorney, Has your client provided any evidence of informed consent for the amendment? A video, a witness affidavit, anything beyond the signed document? No, Your Honor. Then unless you plan to challenge the handwriting analysis, this signature will be considered fraudulent. Dylan's lawyer leaned in, whispered something. She gave a small nod, but didn't speak. The judge looked down at his notes, then back up. In light of this, I'm issuing an order to reinstate the original trust as binding. The amendment is hereby null. Ms. Hargrove retains full legal right to her property. Jean squeezed my hand once beneath the table. When we stood to leave, Dylan remained seated. Her shoulders looked smaller somehow, like someone had let the air out of her. Outside, Jean turned to me. There'll be fallout. Let me know if she retaliates. I nodded. Thank you for everything. I didn't do it for thanks, she said. I did it because you didn't deserve what was done to you. That night, I returned home to Paisley's and poured a small glass of wine. Not to celebrate exactly, just to mark the moment. Later, I stepped onto the porch and found Ezra there with his crossword puzzle and a blanket over his knees. Long day, he asked. Long year, I said. He chuckled softly. You held your own, Edith. I didn't know if I could. You didn't just stand up, he said. You stood tall. The next morning, Frankie called again. His voice was quiet. Dad said, Mom's going away for a while. Where's she going? I don't know. Just said she needs time. She packed a suitcase. Are you okay, I guess? It's just been weird. Change always is. There was a long pause. Grandma? Yes, sweetheart. Can I still come stay with you sometimes? Even if the house is yours again? I smiled. You can stay with me any time. The door's always open. I didn't ask what Dylan was planning next. I figured she'd keep her distance for a while anyway. But I knew this wasn't the end. The first letter arrived 10 days after the ruling. It was slid under the front door at Paisley's. No return address, no stamp, just my name in crooked handwriting. Inside was a single sheet. No greeting, no signature, just 7 typed words. This isn't over. You'll regret this soon. Paisley read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in a Ziploc bag. Do we call the police? She asked. I shook my head. Not yet. The second one came 2 days later, tucked under the windshield wiper of my car while I was at the grocery store. This one had fewer words. Hope you like sleeping with one eye open. That time we did go to the police. An officer named Castillo took the report, photographed the note, and said he'd patrol the street more often. He was kind, said these things usually blew over, but he also gave me his direct number just in case. I didn't have to guess who was behind the notes. What I didn't expect came next. Dylan didn't send another letter. She filed her own lawsuit. Her attorney claimed emotional distress, said the original trust agreement had been unfairly manipulated, and implied that I had used my advanced age and public sympathy to gain favor in court. The document was worded to sound professional, but I could feel her voice under every paragraph. Jean read it twice, then said, "She's lashing out. Can she win?" "She won't. But she'll cost you time, and she'll try to cost you peace." The court date was 6 weeks out. In that time, the tension in our home grew thicker. Paisley tiptoed. Ezra got quiet. Even Frankie seemed more reserved, his visits shorter, his hugs tighter. One afternoon, I sat on the porch with a notebook in my lap. I started writing things down, not legal things, just memories. The name of the paint we used on the house when Lloyd and I moved in. The way the lilac bush out front only bloomed every other spring. How Dylan used to sit on the front steps with a book in her lap, her hair in pigtails. I wrote until my hand cramped. Later that evening, Frankie knocked on the door. His backpack was heavier than usual. "I want to stay through the weekend," he said. "Dad's okay with it. We made dinner together. Macaroni and peas." He set the table. Paisley lit a candle just for fun. After we ate, he looked at me and asked, "Are you scared I didn't answer right away?" Then I said, "I've been through worse." He nodded, like that was enough. That night, as I tucked him into the guest room, he pulled something from his backpack. "I made this for you," he said. It was a drawing, crayon and paper, a little gray house, a tall tree beside it, and a stick figure with silver hair standing on the porch. At the bottom, in blocky letters, he'd written, "My real home." I taped it to the fridge. 2 weeks later, the doorbell rang mid-morning. I opened it to find Dylan on the porch. No lawyer, no papers, just her arms crossed. "Can we talk?" Paisley was in the kitchen. I glanced back and then stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Dylan didn't sit. She stood at the edge of the steps. "You really want to drag this into another court battle?" "You filed, not me. I just want what's fair." "You tried to sell my house," I said. "You forged my name." "If I hadn't caught it, I did what I had to." She cut in. "You always gave everything to Paisley. You think I didn't notice I didn't say anything?" Her voice dropped. "Do you really want Frankie to grow up watching his family fight like this?" I looked at her for a long time. "You should have thought of that before you forged my name." She swallowed hard, then turned and walked down the steps. I didn't expect her to follow through with the case after that, but she did. Papers kept arriving. More filings, more threats. Jean kept calm, always with a pen in hand and a plan on paper. "You're holding your ground," she said. "That matters." Then something changed. One morning, a woman came into Jean's office. Mid-50s hair pulled back, hands shaking. Said her name was Denise. She'd worked at the notary office where Dylan's amended document was supposedly signed. She was willing to testify. Said Dylan had approached her months ago, asked her to make something official, just a family document, and that she'd been pressured into stamping it without seeing any signatures. She said her mother couldn't make the appointment. Denise whispered. Said it was all above board. Jean looked at me. This is it. The following week, we filed a formal motion to dismiss Dylan's lawsuit and submitted Denise's statement. The judge granted a hearing date to review both. We didn't tell Dylan. We let her walk in thinking she still had control. She'd find out soon enough. The courtroom was smaller this time. Just 2 rows of benches. No reporters, no photographers. Just me, Jean, and a woman named Denise, who kept smoothing her skirt like it wouldn't sit right. Dylan walked in with her attorney and barely glanced our way. She was wearing a sharp navy suit, and her hair was pulled into a low twist at her neck. Her eyes flicked past me like I wasn't there. The judge came in 10 minutes later. A younger man this time. Calm, direct. He reviewed the documents for a moment, then nodded toward Jean. Ms. Benton, I understand you have new information relevant to the prior judgment. Jean stood. Yes, Your Honor. We are submitting sworn testimony from a notary public, Denise Ray, who confirms that the notarized amendment submitted by the plaintiff was in fact processed under false pretenses. Ms. Ray was misled by the plaintiff into certifying a signature she did not witness. The judge turned to Denise. You're willing to testify under oath? Denise stood. Her voice shook at first, but steadied by the second sentence. She told me her mother was sick. Said she couldn't make it in person, but everything was signed. I should have known better. I'm sorry I didn't check, but I didn't see Edith sign anything. I was pressured. The judge turned back to Dylan's attorney. Any rebuttal? The attorney cleared his throat. We would argue that the amendment was submitted in good faith based on familial understanding. But the judge was already shaking his head. I've seen enough, he said. This is a clear case of forgery and intent to defraud. Dylan stiffened. Miss Wembley, the judge continued, I am dismissing your claim in its entirety. Furthermore, I am referring the matter of the forged amendment to the district attorney's office for potential charges. Dylan's mouth opened, then closed again. Her attorney leaned in, whispered something, and she shot up from her chair. You can't do that, she snapped. This was a family matter. The judge raised a hand. You came into this court. You used the legal system to pursue a fraudulent claim. You'll now face the legal consequences. Paisley hadn't come that day. She was home with Frankie, who'd caught a summer cold. But when I walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon light, I felt like I was walking a little taller. Jean followed behind her folder, tucked neatly under one arm. She'll probably try to settle before it gets to criminal court, she said. But you don't have to accept anything. I didn't answer. Not yet. 2 weeks passed. Then came the knock at the door. It was Dylan, not sharp-suited this time. Jean's hair, loose, no makeup. She stood with both hands in her pockets, shifting her weight. I didn't open the screen. She looked up. I'm not here to argue. I stayed quiet. I lost the job, she said. The firm found out. They said even if it's not charged yet, it's still a breach of ethics. They let me go last week. Silence stretched between us. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said finally. But I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't expect it to go this far. Still, I didn't speak. She gave a single nod, then turned and walked back down the porch steps. That night, Paisley poured me a cup of tea and said, Do you think she meant it? I looked out the window. I think she meant it. Now. The DA's office reached out later that month. They had everything they needed to press charges, Denise's statement, the forged document, the court transcript. But they offered me the choice. I could pursue the case or request a formal mediation for restitution. I asked for time to think. Frankie was building a puzzle at the kitchen table the next morning when he asked, Are we ever going to see Aunt Dylan again? I sat down beside him. I don't know, sweetheart. He looked up at me. You still love her? I paused, then nodded. I do, but sometimes love has to happen from far away. He seemed to accept that. I returned the DA's call a few days later. I'd like to proceed with the charges, I said. Not out of spite, but because it's what's right. The clerk on the other end thanked me and said they'd be in touch about the next steps. I hung up the phone and exhaled. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles into the corners like sunlight. Something had shifted. The fear was gone. The court case didn't make headlines. No reporters showed up. No neighbors leaned over their fences whispering. It unfolded quietly, just a formal proceeding that led to a conviction for attempted fraud and forgery. Dylan was sentenced to probation and community service. The judge noted her lack of prior offenses, her cooperation once caught. I nodded when I heard the decision. It wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about setting something straight that had gone crooked for too long. She sent a letter a few weeks after the sentencing. No return address. Just a plain envelope, my name written in small, neat handwriting. Inside, one page. She apologized, not just for the forged amendment, but for everything shutting me out, trying to control things that weren't hers, letting pride steer her where kindness should have gone. She said she wouldn't reach out again unless I did. She understood. She just wanted to say it in her own words without a courtroom or lawyers involved. I put the letter in a drawer. Not out of anger, just not ready to let it go yet, but not ready to throw it away either. Paisley and I started planning for fall. Frankie was about to start second grade. He wanted a backpack with dinosaurs on it. Said he liked the blue ones with teeth. I smiled and wrote it down on a shopping list. One afternoon in early September, Paisley and I sat on the back porch, watching Frankie kick a soccer ball across the grass. The sky was clear, the air just starting to shift from summer to something softer. She reached over, touched my hand. "You ever think you'll talk to her again?" she asked. I looked out at the yard. The fence Dylan had once wanted to tear down stood right where it always had. The swing still creaked from that same chain. My world hadn't ended. It had held. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe someday. If she comes back different. If I do." We sat in silence for a while. Not the heavy kind, just easy. Like everything didn't need to be decided right then. Later that evening, Frankie crawled into my lap with a book about whales. He wanted to know why they sang what they said to each other in the dark. I told him I didn't know for sure, but I liked to think they were reminding each other they weren't alone. That night, I stood in the hallway and looked at the framed photos. One of George in his work overalls. One of Frankie grinning at the beach. One of me and Paisley at the county fair, cotton candy in hand, laughing like we had no idea what was coming. And maybe we didn't, but we'd made it through. I didn't get everything back. Not the time lost. Not the clean version of family I used to wish for. But I kept my name. I kept my home. I kept the parts of my life worth protecting. And I learned that dignity isn't always loud. It's sometimes just the quiet act of standing up and saying, "Not this time." Thank you for staying with me through all of this. If you've ever had to choose between peace and approval, I hope this reminded you you don't owe anyone your silence, and you're not selfish for choosing yourself. If this story meant something to you, I'd love to hear where you're listening from. And if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe. There are more stories coming, stories that honor the quiet strength so many of us carry every day.